Welcome to Inside the Den, the podcast of the Avon Grove Charter School in West Grove, Pennsylvania. Each episode, our CEO and head of school, Mrs. Bishop, sits down with the people who make our K-12 community thrive, sharing their voices, stories, and pride in the Wolfpack. So come on in and step into the den with us, the heart of our pack family.
Hi, everyone. I'm about to get started on my very first podcast revival. We did a podcast before, but we're about to revive the podcast, and I'm about to have my very first guest. And it's Miss Tara Delgado, our assistant principal at Avon Grove Charter School. We're going to talk a little bit about 9/11, well, a lot about 9/11. And I just want to put a disclaimer out before we start this conversation that these topics are very sensitive. If you have any trauma based on any kind of 9/11 experience or an emergency that you have been involved in, I want to make sure that I put a disclaimer about the topic and the sensitivity of these issues and stories that we're about to share. Also, as far as age appropriateness, this podcast, parents, staff, yes, appropriate for you. High school students, I would say yes. But anything younger than that, I would make sure that I would listen to this first before sharing with your child. Thank you so much. All right, here we are. We haven't had a podcast in some time, and I'm happy to be back. I'm excited for this podcast in particularly because it's where stories begin as our theme. And there are so many incredible stories out there in our community that we can connect and learn from. And so being that it's September 11th and we want to take some time for reflection, I couldn't think of a better way to start this podcast and have our very own Tara Delgado, our elementary assistant principal of the 4 to 6 division. Welcome, Mrs. Delgado.
Thank you. I'm honored to be the first guest in your resurrection of the podcast.
Yay!
Thank you.
Well, let's start with why this story in particular matters to our school family. And when you think about where stories begin, what does that mean to you personally?
So personally, where stories begin, I mean, when I think about all the different chapters in my life, starting a family, my different careers, I've had many, but specifically where stories begin in regard to 9/11 brings a whole different meaning. It started a whole new chapter for my family because it was the first time in our entire lives of living in New York where we did not feel safe, where we questioned if this was where we wanted to raise our family.
Let me go back. Did you live in New York your whole life?
We did, both my husband and I, born and raised.
What part of New York?
I was born and raised in Brooklyn and then moved to Staten Island.
My girl.
Yeah,
my husband a lot, too. Mrs. Delgado.
Listen, I know. I got that edge. I've got that edge. But it was really the first time where you stood back and said, is this really where we want to raise a family? And listen, I love New York. I'm all about it. So don't take this as hate. But it was, for us, it was a time of reflection where we had to think maybe our next chapter begins somewhere else.
And I know we're going to talk a little bit about what September 11th felt like for you and your family that morning and that day, and after even. But did you stay in New York after September 11th, being that was part of your thinking? Like, did you stay in New York years later, or did you move to this area in Avon Grove shortly after?
So we stayed in New York for another few years, but what pushed us over the edge was after 9/11, and my husband, which we'll talk about, worked in the World Trade Center. But then after 9/11 happened in February, my husband was on a ferry boat coming back from Manhattan that people were decapitated and lost their lives. And a few weeks after that, he was on a train that derailed coming home from New York. So we thought someone was trying to tell us something.
Yeah.
And we started looking for a house outside of New York.
I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. All right. Well, since this episode is really dedicated to 9/11 and really thinking about you and your experience and being a part of that day, tell me a little bit about what you remember living in New York on September 11th. Paint a picture of what that morning started to look like for you.
So that morning was actually a super crazy day. It was my daughter's first day of preschool. And
That's so hard for every
Oh
mom,
my
no matter
gosh.
what.
I know. And so I was already anxiety ridden because she was very, very attached to me. So they had to pry her off of my body to get her into school. So what we would find out later is my daughter's apprehension to start school is actually what saved my husband's life, because he didn't want to leave me alone to deal with her that morning. So he came with me to school.
And that's that everything happens for a reason
Absolutely.
type of thing.
I believe it. So that morning, he accompanied us to school, and I was a teacher assistant in the same preschool. So we went, and as soon as we got her in, when her teacher finally, like I said, pried her off of me, he left and went right to the train station right by the school, and I went into the classroom next door. That's where I was helping out.
And this is why you're so good with our kids with anxiety, because you've been doing it since you had your
long
very
time.
own children.
A long
That
time.
explains a lot.
So so school started there probably around 8:30, and I know the first plane hit around 8:50 or so, I believe. I was standing there, and I had little preschoolers attached to my arms and legs and crying and screaming, "I want my mommy." And all of a sudden, a woman walked into the room and said, "Oh my gosh, a plane just flew into the World Trade Center." And I whipped around and I said, "Which one? Which tower?"
Because
Knowing that
immediately thought your husband works there.
I did. And I was just like, "Oh my gosh." And she saw that I was pregnant, and she was like, "I don't know," and like took off running. And at that point, I didn't really know any of the women who worked there. I was brand new. And then I found out that it was Tower 1 that was hit first. My husband worked in Tower 2. And then I next thing you know, we went into lockdown in the school because we had found out that a second plane had hit, and it seemed that we were under attack. And we heard that there were some of the people involved on the island, on Staten Island. I was living on Staten Island at that time.
The angst that you must have had, and running, like you think about when we talk about safety and active shooter drills and all the things, and immediately parents run to the scene.
Oh, yes.
And so you're saying lockdown to me. Like I was in Philadelphia teaching at that moment, and we were actually being evacuated. So we're being evacuated in Philadelphia, and you're being locked down in New York.
Yes.
Do you feel like people listen to that advice, being locked down, or do you feel like
Absolutely not.
I was going to say, did people's instincts go like lock in and run to the World Trade Center to find loved ones? Like, how did that look?
I think both. I mean, we had parents flooding the schools, trying to get their children. They wanted their children in their possession. Understandable. This was a huge attack on our soil, you know. People were flooding to the World Trade Center, trying to get anywhere near to find people that they loved that worked in the building. I couldn't, right, because I was locked down in the school, and slowly but surely my family started arriving at the school. So my parents were there. It's when I knew something was very wrong, because I turned and saw that my mom and dad had showed up to help manage the upset parents. And
So your mom and dad actually live close by and could come to the school.
yep, my parents were like 10 minutes away from there.
That's nice.
Showed up. One of my brothers was on a express bus heading into New York. They turned around when they heard what had happened. So he showed up, and like I said, my entire family just slowly started showing up.
So your husband's at the World Trade Center that day. What was going on in your mind? Did you try to reach him? Did you hear his voice right away? Did you have some confirmation that you knew that he was okay, or did it take some time?
I did not talk to him because my husband was too cheap to get a cell phone.
And back then, cell phones were not what they are now.
No, not even close. So he did not have one. So I could not get in touch with him.
I can't remember. Was that the flip phone days? Like,
I believe so. Flip or slide.
Okay.
Maybe slide. No, flip.
Okay.
I think they were flip.
We definitely didn't have text messaging. I know that.
No. So I didn't. I had no way of knowing if he was okay. I was trying to put together the timeline from when he left us at the school to when he would have arrived, and I couldn't get that timeline in my head. And it turned out that he was on the train as the first plane hit. He'd come up from the World Trade Center.
Okay.
And he said he looked up, saw the plane hit, and said he heard my voice ringing in his head, "Do not stay, run, do not stay, run," which comes from a previous experience I had in a building I worked in New York. I was always the safety monitor of every floor.
You were born to be the safety monitor.
I love it. I love it. So I was doing safety, and there was a fire above us. This was in a different building, and I evacuated my floor. And apparently we were told to stay. And I said I will never stay in a situation where a ceiling could cave in on me and others, and I had the means to get us out, so I did. And he said he heard me in his head saying, "Don't stay, run." And he just started running. And as he came up and out, the second plane had hit.
Everybody needs a critical thinker in an emergency. Mm-hmm. So I know that you're that person here. So I appreciate that, that he thinks of you. So how long did it take you to make connection with him?
It was a long time. So I can't even recall. And we were trying to remember talking about it last night in preparation for today. But I know that we were finally able to leave the school, I went home, and my family started gathering at my house. And my mom and dad were like, "We want you to come back with us." And I was like, "No, I need to stay here in case he tries to get in touch with me or reach me, or, maybe he gets to a payphone, like, I don't know." And the communication was all shut down throughout New York, so it was hard to even get a call through, to be honest, even on a cell phone. So I set up my answering machine. At the time, answering machines were a thing. I set it up with an outgoing message that said, "If you get this and you're okay, we love you." And, I'm at my mom's, but, we...
Oh, Tara.
Sorry.
It's tough. It's really, I can't even imagine, like, you think about people not being able to get in touch with their loved ones and not knowing if they're dead or alive, and the angst and the feeling of that. I can't even imagine it.
It was a lot.
I can't even imagine it. And you're pregnant.
And I'm pregnant. And I was pregnant, and so I did. I left that outgoing message and then left to go to my parents' house, and we're watching the scene over and over and over on
the
TV.
news. Yeah, that's all they did for like days.
It was horrible. And I was pacing, and I said, "I can't stay here. I need to go back home." And people talk about that day, how clear it was, what a gorgeous day it was. And it was. Let me tell you, like, I remember sitting on my porch and just looking up at the sky and thinking, it's the most beautiful day. Bad things can't happen today. And while I was sitting there, neighbors were approaching me. "Oh, I had just talked to him this morning," like talking to me like he was already gone. Like, like he wasn't coming back. So it was very tough. I never heard from him until I found out that, I was on the porch, and all of a sudden I see my father-in-law tearing down the street. And I'm like, what is he doing? And in the passenger seat was my husband.
Oh.
And I blacked out from there.
I bet you did.
He came running towards me. I went running towards him. I must have screamed because my family came running out of the house.
Oh, Tara. Now, was it like hours, days?
Yes. It was. It was a long while because he said by the time he made his way out of Manhattan, like...
Was he over the bridge, like one of the walkers that went over the bridge to New Jersey? Or?
No. He he said when the second plane hit, he had to take cover because, you can imagine the amount of debris and stuff that's flying. And then he said every chance he got, he kept running towards the ferry to try to get on the ferry to get over. And he made it on the very last ferry over
Oh,
because they had
geez.
shut down any means to get
Over.
out of Manhattan
Yeah.
because of the suspected terrorists
Yeah.
floating around on the in Manhattan.
How'd your father-in-law get him? Like, how did
So
they connect?
my father-in-law he was a manager of an Amco shop all the way down near the ferry, but far from the ferry. My husband had to walk from there. He decided to just walk from there to his father's shop,
Oh, geez.
and he found him there.
Talk to me a little bit about the community and the connections. I'm assuming you lost people close to you that day. How did your community, your neighbors, your colleagues, your friends, how did they come together in those days and weeks even after?
I have to tell you, in my life, I never felt more community than I did during that time living in New York. I was incredibly fortunate. I did not lose any close friends or family, but we had students that lost parents, friends that lost cousins and parents and husbands and wives. But what I witnessed the days and weeks following changed me forever, because I witnessed people pulling together in ways that I can't even explain. Everyone was offering to help. Neighbors, people came from all over to help. My dad and my brother actually worked for the New York City Transit Authority at that time, and they both volunteered their time when they weren't on working to help recover bodies and help with recovery efforts, because what a lot of people don't know is there was a train station under the World Trade Center.
Right.
So it collapsed on a train station.
Oh,
Which you can
wow.
imagine how busy in New York a train station is.
Oh, my gosh. I don't think anybody really talks about that. Wow.
And because so many people came together to volunteer, my dad had a respirator, issued, and he gave it to a young guy that came to help. And the guy was like, no, I don't want to take it. And my dad said, I've lived my life. You're a young guy. Take it. And my dad suffered from health issues from that for years.
Just by volunteering.
Yeah, because the amount of asbestos and debris that they were inhaling deep under there, it was unbelievable. But the level of care and concern that people showed was beyond anything I could imagine. And for years afterward, every time I heard America the Beautiful, I would just cry. Every home in New York had a flag, and for forever, I can't even tell you how long. It was unreal.
It never ceases to amaze me when a tragedy happens or something that unites us, we all come together, and how quickly that feeling fades.
I know.
And, all I can hope is that, like, these type of days, that even people that have never experienced something as tragic as what happened on 9/11, that they can see that people, when they do come together, do such great things. And I've seen it here at Avon Grove Charter School, where tragedy hits a family or a colleague, and we all come together. And it's when you talk to people about why they love Avon Grove Charter School, it's usually the example that they will use as part of, like, feeling like a family or coming together when we needed it the most.
Yeah.
And so there is something about that really unites a community and sustains itself. I'm sure
agree.
you still talk to a lot of those people today.
Absolutely. And like I said, it's what stays with me is when people face the most difficult and horrific experience, other people respond and they step up with care and compassion and selflessness. And it's something that I carry with me every day as an educator. It's, believing in people's capacity for goodness and community, even in the darkest of times.
I love that. So, talking about how this experience shaped you as an educator, I think is really important. And obviously, I see the resilience in you every day.
Thanks.
So I'd love you to share how that experience in New York, like, prepared you for things here at Avon Grove Charter School. I know last year when we did the emergency drill, I made you a captain, and there was a reason, because you had such experience in emergencies. So, like, tell me how that experience and then us having the big drill that we had last year with all the emergency personnel really kind of helped you with some decision making.
Well, I think that the experience definitely taught me resiliency, and that you can't find resiliency alone. It's something that you have to build together. The importance of community. When my husband survived 9/11, I watched our entire community wrap around us and so many other families. People showed up in ways that you couldn't believe. I never expected, offering help, love, just their presence when you needed them. As an educator, it changed everything for me. I see every student as someone who will face their own challenges, maybe not anything as horrific as 9/11, but real and difficult for them in their world. And what I want them to know is that reaching out isn't weakness, it's wisdom, that people genuinely care and want to help. But if you don't let them in, they can't help. And, my years in New York City gave me real world experience in emergency situations that you can't get from just training alone. Like, I served as the safety person, like I said earlier, in all of my previous jobs, and my instinct was always keep people safe. If you get a clear path, go. I remember a situation where there was the fire on the floor, and I found other floors had stayed put, and I was like, I'm not staying. Who's coming with me? And I left. I ran out of there with my flashlight and my whistle, and I got us out of there. Those experiences taught me to think quickly and decisively, and my ultimate goal was always the safety of everyone around me. And sometimes that meant making a tough call in the moment, but I think that heightened safety mindset is what was really beneficial when we ran the intruder drill last year, because I feel like I was able to stay calm, think clearly, and focus on getting students and staff to safety and deal with all the other things like parents showing up. I've lived it. So, yeah.
I think it's so interesting. Like, for me, decades have gone by. And when we think about educating kids now about this, like when I was a teacher, and it first happened, it was something you came together every single year and did a lesson with your kids because they watched it on the news with their parents and they were traumatized by what they saw. But now these kids are born in a generation that some of them don't even know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And as a kid, I remember thinking history, like Pearl Harbor. Okay.
Right.
You don't really appreciate unless it's close to you to understand our history.
Yeah.
And I think this is such a big part of our history, and I think sometimes kids want to shelter their kids from things that a story like this, and I think we're missing an opportunity for kids to learn all the lessons that were taught to us that day.
Yeah.
So I know I've been to the 9/11 Memorial Museum with the kids, with my own kids. Have you been?
Yes, we have.
Okay. I know that's probably a whole different meaning for you than for somebody who wasn't involved in 9/11, but still really meaningful. Knowing your grade levels in elementary school, like, do you think that's a good experience for kids to go on that field trip and at least with their parents to visit that site?
I do. I think that there's value in it. I mean, it's memorialized to people who lost families that day. It's difficult for us to be there because it feels very empty to us to be there. I worked in the World Trade Center before my husband ever did. I was there during the 93 bombing, car bombing. So it just has a lot of history for us. Right. But I do. And there are other ways for families to also educate their children. I did a little research and found, like, there's the National September 11th Memorial and Museum. There's the Tunnel to Towers 9/11 Institute, the National Education Association, Brain Pop. Brain Pop has a ton of videos and worksheets and all types of cool things for kids.
I think what we can do is definitely put them in the SMORE or even on our website so that parents can have a link to those things, because I can't think of a better time to kind of reflect and talk to your kids developmentally appropriately. And I'm sure some of those tools will give you guidance on how to have those conversations. But I don't think this is a time where we miss an opportunity to educate our kids in days like 9/11.
I agree.
Well, I can't think of a better guest to have with me on my first revival of the podcast. Mr. Maitland, Dr. D was our last person on a podcast with me, and I'm sure he's going to listen to this and be very sad that he's not on here with me, but I'm very happy that you are here with me and shared your experiences. I appreciate you. I know this wasn't easy for you.
Thank you.
So I appreciate you being here. I thank you for your service here at Avon Grove Charter School, because your presence here is such a huge bonus value of our school community. So thank you for everything you do here at our school.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure. And next time, happy topic.
Yes, for sure, for sure. I was going to say before we end, since we did talk such a deep topic, what's your favorite restaurant in New York City? Like maybe the listeners want to know from an authentic New York, born and raised, like where's your go-to when you go to New York City?
Well, we love the pizza from Lentos. So
Okay, all right.
we go
Well, you
there
heard it
whenever we
here
can.
first
Lentos.
on the podcast. Lentos, if you're going to a little trip to New York City,
Delicious
is where
pizza.
Mrs. Delgado says to go and eat some pizza.
Yeah.
All right, then. Thank you so much,
Thank
Mrs.
you.
Delgado.